Yeah.
So I'll go up there and I'll just talk to them.
Sure. Yeah.
What time is it now? 3 minutes, 10:57, eh? Good morning, everyone. You might want to come in a little bit. There's no formal service here this morning. However, we will mark a minute of silence, and we'll also provide an opportunity after that for anyone to come up and give us a story. This is a local community respect to those who have served and those who continue to serve and who have fallen. I live in the neighborhood. I just introduced myself to a few others. Nice to see some naval officers and Army here. I think maybe we have some Air Force. All of you in former serving. Take things a little different. While things go downtown, but at 1400 today, there will be a Legion Run ceremony, I believe, here. But because of COVID, things may change. How are we doing for time?
1 more minute.
We got 1 minute. So what will happen at 1100? I will come to attention. I'll say the word parade. I'll face the cenotaph. I'll salute, come down, and then I'll lower my head, and then we'll go into a minute of silence. So I'll come back up. Then I'll read the naval prayer. So I'm the Navy guy here. And then we'll continue from there. So I hope this delivers something for you today. You got the time. Is it 11?
Not yet.
Okay. Hooray, that tangent. Good. 3, yeah. Stand at eat. Stand. Move and rest. And eat. Now this is a minute of silence. So, what I'll do right now is read the naval prayer. Thank God for this. I lost my little cue card. Right. O eternal Lord God, who alone spreadest out the heavens and rulest the raging of the sea, who has compassed the waters with bounds until day and night come to an end. Be pleased to receive into thy almighty and most gracious protection the persons of us, thy servants, and the fleet in which we serve. Preserve us from the dangers of the sea and the violence of the enemy, that we may be a safeguard unto our most gracious sovereign lady, Queen Elizabeth, and the security for such as pass on the seas upon their lawful occasions, that the inhabitants of our commonwealth may in peace and quietness serve thee our God, and that we may return to safety to enjoy the blessing of our land with the fruits of our labors and with a thankful remembrance of thy mercies, to praise and glorify thy holy name. Amen. Right. So here's where we come to the informal part. And I will talk a little bit about the naval prayer and in a bit of a layman's term, because I'm a naval warfare officer. I've been to sea. Those of you on Netflix may watch some more movies, but there's one called Greyhound that's out recently. And it's about the Battle of the Atlantic and the fight against the U-boats. Now, if you ever wondered what it's like to be out in the North Atlantic, the colors, the darkness that was written down in the prayer we just had, the raging of the seas. Fellow sailors that are here know what that's like to be in a high sea state. The ship is rolling hard. You're trying to stay well because of motion sickness. safety of the ship because dishes are breaking. But can you imagine, as I talked to a 104-year-old Royal Navy veteran last week who fought against you, that someone is trying to kill you. You're fighting against U-boats, you have rounds coming down, and I invite you to just watch Greyhound. Because the sound of those guns going off, the movement of the ships brought me back to my recent experience on the bridge of a warship. It's pretty close. And to talk to this 104-year-old veteran chief petty officer, a young fella at the time, he's 104 now, but to go through that. And also he apparently survived the torpedoing. Be in the sea, many lose their lives, fire, oil, suffering. And just trying to make it. So I've been out in rescuing ships that have gone sailing boats, and others have been out to sea, whether in a sailing boat or whatever, can experience how nervous, the fear of just being at the sea in a raging storm itself. So just think about that there's one thing to sailing a boat, flying an aircraft, driving a tank. It's another thing to fight it and defend it for your people, for your team, and for your country. That takes a different level. But what's really nice when we bring people here is the stories I've heard over the last few years. This may be my last year in uniform, but there was a person who was a child during, there's another Netflix movie, The Forgotten Battle, the Battle of the Scheldt. The Army must know that well. I had a great uncle who died in December 44. He was a signaler with the 2 Canadian Corps Division, and he lost his life just before Christmas. And I went to visit his grave in Agenum in Belgium, beautiful cemetery. And what really was remarkable, if you've ever been there, I don't know there's a number of folks who probably visited the war graves, but there was a grade 5 class, I was told, that came right up upon me. I was in uniform, I was looking for my great uncle's grave, and they were identifying on little sheets of paper. They'd go over and lay a little flower on each grave. They came up to me, the teacher said, "What are you doing here?" I said, "I'm here to pay my respects to my great uncle." And they all gathered around and she explained Dutch or Belgian, why I was there, and you see the faces on the little kids. But they understood. They've never forgotten. And we should never forget the sacrifices through any war. And I think even the current conflict, which recently ended with our departure out of Afghanistan, because I have friends and colleagues who've been there, especially in the Canadian Army, who have suffered and are still living with battle wounds that work with them. It's men, women, children from all our families. My dad was a pharmacist. Others are from all walks of life. But this is an opportunity to remember those who serve and serving, but those who will serve. And I will say we're record low recruitment, record releases in the military. We need people to serve. Just like your immune system does for your body, your police system does for your community. We need armed forces for the people of Canada. So please, think of that too for your sons and daughters, friends and family. It's a great opportunity. I've been a scientist. I worked in the banking industry, now I serve full time. It's a fantastic experience. But back to some stories, as I was just saying before I invite you over. The Dutch, when the Canadians were coming in, the community the family was housing German soldiers. They would go out and come back. And they would hide in the basement, like the Germans would go out and they would come back and, oh God, I guess Canadians aren't doing that well. And then the sounds and the shells started coming close. And they heard a vehicle pull up front, and then the door was slammed down. They heard the door and they were nervous downstairs. And bang, 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 they heard the metal, they heard the boots coming down the stairs. And they started to cry because they thought the Germans were coming back and the Canadians were defeated and their hopes for liberation were done. But no, he shouted out, "Is anyone there?" in English. And said that was a defining moment. So I don't know if that lady is here right now, but that was a Canadian, 2 Canadians that walked into their house. And that was the start of their first day of freedom in years. There was another story of, and there were parachutes being made here, and another story of a family here who had just recently attended their mother's funeral. But the mother grew up in London during the Blitz. She loved the dog fights, went outside when her dad and mom said, "Do not dare to do that because you might get hurt." So she goes out, like any curious young kid. A 20mm round comes down from one of the fighters, knocks her over. Don't kill her, knocks her over. She kept that. But the biggest challenge for their estate was, who's going to take the round from mom? Who's going to take the bullet from mom, right? So the experiences are large and local and personal. So anyway, it's enough for me. I don't know, we have anybody who'd like to bring their story of today, of past?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Sir, my name is TJ Kelly, and I'm with the Canadian Army. I know only one soldier who was killed in Afghanistan. His name was Sergeant Cruz. Sergeant Cruz was my instructor in demolitions during basic training, and we didn't like him. He was sarcastic. We felt he was mean. And he was deployed at the same time I was in Kandahar. He was doing explosives, demolitions, he was defusing IEDs. But he was caught in a trap by the Taliban. While he was defusing one, another bigger bomb went off. He was killed. I was at the airfield when they loaded his casket into the plane to bring him on his last flight home. And the Padre told us, he announced to the parade, that Sergeant Cruz was returning, that he had 2 twin daughters at home. Girls 2 or 3, 2nd or 3rd grade. Girls who would never see their father alive again. Sir, on November 11th, during the minute of silence, it's Sergeant Cruz's face I see, and it's those Padres' words that I hear. I think of those twin girls, and I think of the families. Everyone I've met has always said, sir, that it is the families who suffer more than the soldiers who are deployed. And so I try to remember them as well as our veterans when I come to the cenotaph.
Thank you. Please come forward.
This is the last known picture of my great uncle, William Claude Perry. And he was one of a set of twins, and he was a 2nd lieutenant at the Battle of the Somme. Hardly needless to say, he didn't survive, along with thousands and thousands of other Canadian soldiers, British soldiers, you name it, soldiers. I found out yesterday that he was in a trench very close to the front, and a shell landed very close to him, blew off his arm at the shoulder, and rather than take the first ambulance, Uncle Claude told his soldiers who were wounded and those who were healthy to help the wounded into the ambulance, and he took the 2nd ambulance, but he had bled too much and he didn't survive. He's buried in France. I have never been to the grave site, but I have been to Gallipoli in Turkey, and just this past summer, the Trail of the Caribou, the big bronze statues that commemorate the Royal Newfoundland Regiment, the last one was installed on Turkish soil this past summer, so the trail is now complete. I am not a Newfoundlander, but there might be somebody out there. So thank you very much. Thank you for your service. God bless.
I remember today my great uncle as well, William Joseph Ryan from Van Cleek Hill. He was killed at Hill 355 on the Korean Peninsula on October 23rd, 1952. The circumstances are still murky, but recalling TJ's words about the impact on the family, I never really knew Billy Ryan, who I'm named after, but I do recall Christmas Eve about 15 years ago, about 2 o'clock in the morning. My grandfather was up. For some reason I was up, and all he wanted to talk about was the advice he'd given Billy to join the Canadian Forces, and how proud of his time that he had served was, and how sad he was that Billy never made it home. So just as he recalls him that night, I recall him today, and hopefully I will never forget. Thanks.
Thank you.
I was in a government drawn foot guard. You don't have to be in a conflict zone to die. Guardsman David Spinney died in 1987 in Petawawa, and his whole life was a part of it. And all I gotta say is people like him and other people who have died in the military, we owe all them a favor. We owe them a debt. We have to learn life as if it's the last day of our life, because we are lucky to have them and lucky to have the freedom that we have. And I'd like to pay respect to him. I'd like to pay respect to everybody in the service. Thank you very much, sir.
I'm not going to say last call. You want something to say, sir?
I'm Captain Navy Sam Sader. I'm just moved into the neighborhood. I was base commander of CFB's Cornwall, third largest naval base in Canada. And you know, when I moved here, I thought I was getting away from the Navy. So thank you for bringing me back to the naval prayer. And this is a very moving ceremony. And I was thinking about maybe going downtown at the National War Memorial, but these are really the intimate and special ceremonies where we feel the support from the community, and it makes them so much more special. I've had the chance to speak with many veterans in my previous position, and unequivocally every time they want to pass on that they want people to move, the message to be moved through the community. And I'm heartened to see some young people here today, and some young at heart, but I see some kids, and that is the most important message for us. That is the message they want. They want the generations that come, the future generations, to remember the sacrifice that they've made. We all stand on the shoulders of giants, and it's so important and moving that to see the community in this fashion here today come together to remember. I myself, my family immigrated to Canada. I was 10 years old. I come from a war-torn country. I've decided to serve because I know the value of the justice, freedom, equality that so many across the world long for. And we're so fortunate as Canadians to be able to enjoy. My distant cousin, I will name his name today, Trooper Mark Diab from the 12th Royal Dragoons, passed away in Afghanistan serving this great nation so that we can enjoy freedom and that so we can perpetuate the values that this country stands for. And today, I thank you all and all your beautiful diversity for taking the time to come here and to remember. Thank you.
In Sicily and was involved in Queen Poland, and he also fought in the battle for Torna, and the people were so appreciative. The people of Torna were so appreciative that they gave him a big Thanksgiving turkey dinner, him and all the other soldiers, and he said it was one of the best meals he'd ever had. And he's currently living in Trenton, and I'm very thankful for the service that he did for our country, and I love him very much, and I'm proud of him. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
after the war, you know, people never really talked about that kind of stuff. But I guess my mother's cousin, they were fixing the cantina years back, and under the wine barrels, they found munitions and guns that they were hiding there for the resistance. During the war, not everybody in Italy was a fascist or a Nazi supporter, and my family was not. I'm grateful for that. And interestingly enough, my grandfather at the end of the war was in the Alps. I'm not quite sure the details, but there were pockets of people that didn't even know the war was over yet, and he actually walked at night and slept through the day, which was another communication barrier because he didn't actually know that he could walk home, but he walked home from France. Here's my story. It's very simple.
Thank you.
I'd like to take this moment to honor my father, John Henley. When I was young and foolish and naive, I never bothered to ask him about his experience in the war. I didn't really care. I was too young. And now he's gone and I can't ask him. All I know about his service is that he was one of the individuals that went to the Netherlands after the war had ended, and he helped to restore the Netherlands. And a few years ago I went to one of the cemeteries in the Netherlands, and it was such a moving moment to be there and to hear about how they were so grateful to the Canadian soldiers. And I was so grateful to my father for his part.
I'm obviously 88 years of old. I have dual citizenship, Australia and Canada. This is in honour of my grandfather-in-law, who at the age, I think early 20s, signed up for the First World War. He went to Gallipoli. He then got his first lieutenant and second lieutenant in England, got to fight in France, and his first battle, he was lost. The town was Bullecourt in the centre of France, and my wife and I followed his route. A few years ago we went to Bullecourt, followed his route as he marched, was never seen again. My grandfather-in-law. So I do remember him on this day.
I'm a native from Ottawa. 5 of us kids. 4 of us were in the Air Force. My oldest brother joined in 1950 as a pilot in Crew Sabres, the 439 Squadron. While he was stationed in Ottawa, Mayor Whitman was the mayor then, and they were getting ready to leave to go to England and North Luffenham. The mayor complained because they were flying at fast speeds and breaking windows all over the place. The mayor said, "This will cease." The next morning, they all flew over the mayor's house at their own dimes. His other little trick was, on Sunday, a lot of people used to drive up Riverside, watch the airplanes fly and everything else. The commanding officer wasn't on the base that day, but he went out, doing little sorties, saw this convertible going down Riverside, did a little low towards the car. The gentleman was watching them, and then they went into the sand up there, and they just up in the way. That little there. Anyway, he flew to North Luffenham, came back as a liaison officer for Leapfrog 2 in Wisconsin. Got married, got his bride back with him. June 23rd, 1953, crashed his jet. Doing a sortie, 3 of them. 2 of them went up, he went down. They found the place where he crashed. This happened in June. His son was born in September. He lives in Ottawa. His second brother joined in 54. He stayed 18 years in the service. I joined in 55. Retired after 23 years. My sister joined in 56 as a nursing sister in Ottawa. We enjoyed our life in the workplace. Glad I served.
Well, if that's it. Oh, no. Okay. Let's see people moving. Okay, final call. This is the final call. Thank you for coming out this morning. Thank you for remembering. Thank you for putting the people of Canada who serve in your hearts today, taking the time. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Len.